Hey guys, so here are the notes for section 4.3. We are going to factor quadratics. Now we're going to do this when a equals 1. So this is going to be a review of Algebra 1 or stuff that you saw in Algebra 1. Okay, let's kind of go back to some algebra review, definitely with these vocabulary words. Okay, the first one is monomial. So monomial means one term. So that could be like a 3, just an x, or even negative 4xy. Why that's a monomial is that because though it seems like there's 3 terms, it's all being multiplied. So it's just 1. Okay, a binomial is going to be 2 terms. So in order to have multiple terms, you have to have an addition or a subtraction sign in between. So you see the 2 examples they're given to us, 2x plus 7. This is a binomial because we have 2 terms and it's separated by an addition sign. X minus 3 is also a binomial because there's 2 terms and is separated by a subtraction sign. And lastly, a trinomial. That means, of course, 3 terms. Okay? So that means, remember, we separate with an addition or subtraction sign, so that means we have 3 terms here. Okay? Okay, so basically we're going to factor. The opposite of factoring is foiling, so you can use that method to check your answers if you need to. And we'll go over that in our first example. Okay, so we're going to factor if it's possible. Let's look at our first example, x squared plus 7x plus 10. Now, when we do this, we want to create 2 sets of parentheses, okay? And what we need to do is figure out what are 2 numbers that multiply to our last term, in this case 10, and adds up to our middle term, which is 7x. So in order to do that, we need to figure out what are all the factors of 10. What I mean by factors is numbers that multiply to 10. So we have 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Now, which pair will add up to 7? Well, that's going to be our 2 and 5. So I put x and x, and then I'm going to do 2 and 5. Now, the order doesn't matter. So you could have put x and 5 in the first set of parentheses and x and 2 in the second. Now, we add up to a positive 7. So in order to do that, we know 2 plus 5 gives us that. So we need both of these to be addition signs. Now, let's say you don't know if your answer is correct. Well, what you can do is use the FOIL method. Or another way is you're just distributing each term in that first set of parentheses to each term in the second set, okay? So we're going to FOIL just to make sure we factor this correctly. So I do x times x, that's my first, so that gives me x squared. I do my outer, so that's 5 and x, so that gives me plus 5x. Then I do my inner, which is 2 and x. And then my last, which are the constants. So when I add up my like terms, I get x squared plus 7x plus 10. And so therefore, I did my factoring correctly. Now, do you need to do this all the time? No, but it's just a good method if you're not sure if you did it correctly. FOIL or distribute, multiply to see if you got it correct. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay, once again, we have to figure out all the factors of the last term, in this case 20. We have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and then we have 4 and 5. List all of them. Now, we need to figure out which pair adds up to our negative 9x. Well, the only ones would be 4 and 5. Okay, create 2 sets of parentheses, x in both of them, and I'm going to have 4 and 5. Now, notice we have negative. So negative 4 minus 5 will give us that. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try the next one. Okay, let's go over this. So the factors, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay, the only ones that will add up to 13 is 1 and 12. So we have x and x, 1 and 12. We add up to a positive, so both of these are positive as well. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Let's look at the next one. Actually, go ahead and do these on your own. Do the first one on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and do this first one on your own. Okay, let's see what you got. So factors of 4 is 1 and 4, 2 and 2. The only pair is going to be that 2 and 2. And we're adding up to a negative 4x, so I need both of these to be negative. Another way to write this, because notice that these factors, so the x minus 2 and x minus 2, they are exactly the same. So another way of writing this is saying x minus 2 squared. So you have two ways of writing this. Okay, now let's get to the next one. We have x squared minus 4. Now, notice what's different. All the other ones we've been factoring were trinomials, right? They had 3 terms. In this case, we have a binomial. Another thing you see is that we're missing our middle term, the x term. We have our x squared and we have our constant, okay? So let's figure out all the numbers that multiply to 4, the factors of 4. So we have 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Now, because we're missing that middle term, that is basically a 0x. Which ones would add up to a 0x? Well, that's going to be our 2 and 2. In order to get a 0x, one has to be negative, the other one has to be positive. 2 minus 2 gives us 0, and that's what happens, okay? Now, this is actually a special type of factoring. This is what we call a difference of squares. Please write this down, because I'm going to refer to this quite a bit. So what a difference of squares is, it's going to be a binomial that you're going to factor. You're going to have the x squared, and you're going to have the constant. Now, another thing is, basically what you're going to have is that constant is going to be what we call a perfect square. This is why we call it difference of squares. So actually, you take the square root of 4, that's how we get our 2 and 2 inside the factors or inside the parentheses. And we call it a difference because different means subtraction, and we're subtracting. So let's look at x squared minus 36. So instead of writing out all the factors of 36 or all the numbers that multiply to it, we are going to do this by thinking of, well, 36 is a perfect square. So you kind of have to know your perfect squares here, okay? So I'm going to create 2 sets of parentheses. I have x and x. I know this is a difference of squares because, 1, it's a binomial. We are subtracting. You only have x squared and the constant, and that constant is a perfect square, okay? So write this down. This is a difference of squares because once you recognize this, factoring is so much easier. Okay, well, what's the square root of 36? If you don't know, plug it into your calculator. Well, it should be 6, okay? Now, when we factor, one has to be a subtraction, the other has to be addition. Because remember, we're still adding up to a 0x. So 6 minus 6 gives us that 0. Okay, what I would like you to do is pause this video and go ahead and do these 3 examples here. Okay, let's look at this one. Notice when I found the factors of 12, none of them added up to our middle term of 6x. So when that occurs, we just say it's non-factorable, or you cannot factor it, okay? Here's the answer to the next one. So this one we have x minus 2 times x minus 3. So negative 2 minus 3 does add up to our middle term. And negative 2 times negative 3 gives us positive 6. And then the last one was also non-factorable. You cannot factor. Because when we found the factors of 6, none of them added up to our middle term of negative 8x. Okay, once again, pause the video and try these on your own. Okay, here are the answers. Hopefully you got the same there. Okay. Okay, once again, go ahead, pause the video and try these on your own. Okay, here are the answers. Now notice every single time I find the factors of that constant or the last term. And then I decide which pair adds up to that middle. So on the first one, that was nice and easy. Just be careful with your signs. So notice we had a negative 8x, so that means negative 1 plus a negative 7 gives me that negative. And then on the next one, I have to have positive to add up to a positive 11x. And then on the last one, I have a mixture. So we do 6 minus 3, that adds up to that 3x. Okay? So just be careful on those whenever you're figuring out if it has to be addition, subtraction, or either or a mixture of it. Okay? Okay, so that's basically it of the notes. Make sure if you have any questions, you contact me, and make sure you work on that homework assignment. See you guys later.